Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deborah Yedlin. I'm President and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all here today on a day that is absolutely transformative for the city, for the province, and for the country. I can't think of another event hosting the Prime Minister of Canada on a day when a historic memorandum of understanding has been signed between the province and the federal government. As an Albertan born and raised, I can't be prouder today. Prime Minister, thank you for being here. I think the fact this room sold out in less than 24 hours on a few days' notice is testament to how pleased we all are to welcome you to Calgary, and there might even have been a secondary market for tickets. We appreciate you being here today, as well as many of your federal government colleagues who have regularly been through Calgary in the past few months. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you here today to a place many of us have the privilege of calling home. This is Treaty 7 territory, comprised of the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai Nations, First Nations, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. Calgary is also home to Otipemisiwak Métis Government Districts 5 and 6, and to the many urban Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. This acknowledgement is especially meaningful today as we gather here among people from diverse backgrounds and experiences, people who have stewarded this land for generations and those who have arrived more recently. We in Canada are bound by our common values of mutual respect, of collaboration and camaraderie, and of shared prosperity. As the Prime Minister said in his speech earlier this year, we are a pluralistic society that works. Our cities are among the most diverse in the world. Public square is loud, diverse, and free. By the nature of our federation, we have to practice collaboration and partnership. And that's what the MOU today represents, partnership. We're fortunate today to be joined by several notable guests, many of whom have been working tirelessly to advance our shared goals and make Canada a stronger and more prosperous society for the benefit of all of us. Now, we have a number of notable guests in the audience. I'm going to introduce them. I'll ask them to give a wave as I acknowledge you. And for the audience, please hold your applause because we have a very long list. Of course, the Right Honourable Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, the Honourable Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, the Honourable Eleanor Olszewski, Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience, Corey Hogan, Member of Parliament for Calgary Confederation and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Marc-André Blanchard, Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, Christiane Fox, Deputy Clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Vandergrift, Deputy Minister of Natural Resources Canada, the Honourable Lois Mitchell, 18th Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, the Honourable Nathan Neudorf, Alberta's Minister of Affordability and Utilities, Bruce McAllister, Executive Director of the Premier's Southern Alberta Office, Liam Stone, Alberta Deputy Minister of Executive Council, Larry Comeyer, Alberta's Deputy Minister of Energy and Minerals, Christopher McPherson, Alberta's Deputy Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration, Mayor Jeremy Farkas and several City Councillors from Wards 3, 4, 12 and 13, Chief Troy Knowlton, Blackfoot Confederacy, Chief Traveller Plaited Hair, Blood Tribe, Councillor Dorothy First Rider, Blood Tribe, and the Honourable Jason Kenney, former Premier of Alberta. I'd also like to acknowledge several of our Chamber board members with us here today. Board Chair Jason Hatcher with Navigator, Vice Chair Scott Wenger with Suncor, Alison Robb, TELUS Convention Centre, Anne Harding, Forum Community Relations, Brian Lanier, the Leaders Circle, Ian Anderson, Independent Executive Advisor, Kelsey Hahn with Monarch, and Spencer Forgo from ATCO. thank you so much for being here and for your support year-round of our endeavours. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for their generous support of today's event. Our presenting sponsor, Capital Power, our thanking sponsor, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, and our supporting sponsors, ATCO, Enbridge, Ernst & Young, Imperial Oil, Keyera, Pembina, TransAlta, TELUS, and to our venue partner, Calgary TELUS Convention Centre, and our AV partner, Encore. We could not bring the business community together the way we do without you, so thank you very much. We're so delighted to come together today, and it's a true privilege to welcome the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Mark Carney, to Calgary. Who would have thought two kids from Laurier Heights in Edmonton would end up one day on the same stage? In fact, we might even have learned to skate on the same community rink. And although we both grew up in Edmonton in the era of Wayne Gretzky, worked at Goldman Sachs, we met during the Prime Minister's time as Governor of the Bank of Canada. It was right before the financial crisis in 2008, and we were seated together at the annual Spruce Meadows Roundtable, hosted by the late Ron Southern. And we were discussing what could happen if Lehman Brothers failed and how it would impact the global markets. Little did we know. Well, he knew more than I did, but he didn't share that information for obvious reasons. In the months that followed and through his tenure as Bank of Canada Governor, I had the privilege of interviewing him several times when I was writing for the Calgary Herald, where we talked at length about Canada's economic growth, interest rate policy, the importance of economic diversification, the role of energy, why our productivity was lagging other countries, the value of the Canadian dollar, and Canada's role in the global economy. I expect our conversation today will contain some of those same themes. Prime Minister Carney has been in office for a little over 8 months, and his leadership couldn't have come at a more transformational time for Canada. In some respects, it's similar to the aftermath of the financial crisis, which happened 8 months into his tenure as the Bank of Canada Governor. It was a time when he was instrumental in ensuring the recession experienced in this country was short-lived. Our country is at an inflection point, or a hinge moment, as the Prime Minister likes to call it, as we adjust to the fact that our post-war world order has been entirely upended and global trade flows forever changed. It's a world shaped by tariffs, shifting trade dynamics, evolving geopolitics, new and emerging technologies that present both risk and opportunity. Amidst all this, there's an urgent need to balance economic growth with social and fiscal responsibility. And we have a shared vision between the government, the federal government, the provincial government, and our business community. This morning's announcement heralds truly a new era in the relationship between Alberta and Ottawa. If you asked any of us in this room 12 months ago whether the Prime Minister of Canada would be in Calgary to sign an MOU that will remove regulatory barriers to energy and related infrastructure development, kickstart the largest CCUS project on the planet, and expand our ability to sell to new markets, no one would have taken that bet. We know the energy sector is a key economic driver for Canada, with taxes and royalties supporting budgetary commitments, employing more than 500,000 people directly or indirectly, accounting for a quarter of international exports and being the largest employer of Indigenous peoples in this country. It matters. Everything we do every day takes energy. And now we have a Prime Minister and some federal ministers who understand that and who have worked tirelessly along with Premier Smith, her dedicated ministers and staff to get us to today. I think of all the work that has gone into this, and I think of the line from John F. Kennedy's moonshot speech. We go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And 8 years later, Neil Armstrong was on the moon. This was hard, and it's the beginning of a journey. But in 8 years, I'm confident we will be able to point to many energy projects that began with today's MOU. Thank you, and congratulations to everyone who played a role in getting us here. Prime Minister, you come to a very different city than when you were Bank of Canada Governor. Back then, all we really talked about was the oil price, maybe Northern Gateway. Today, it's all about oil and natural gas, but we've added clean tech, agriculture and ag tech, fintech. The University of Calgary is playing an important role in our economic diversification as it continues to create more startups than any other U15 university in the country, and where the X Prize has chosen to locate its first Canadian hub. It's also a city that boasts the fastest growing tech talent workforce in North America and is attracting more venture capital and deals than Vancouver. Calgary is a place where we start something, many things. We take risks, we welcome people, we listen to new ideas, and when we fail, we try again. We are Alberta's corporate headquarters, where the decisions will be made to set Canada on a path to achieving what we know we can be, an energy superpower. It's an ambitious goal, but let's face it, the way things look for Canadian hockey teams at the moment, being an energy superpower looks more achievable than any one of them winning a Stanley Cup. And yes, that includes the Oilers. Ouch. It's now my pleasure to introduce one of the companies leading the charge to us becoming an energy superpower, and someone who's quite happy today. Please join me in welcoming Avik Dey, President and CEO of Capital Power, who will be providing remarks on behalf of our presenting sponsor.
Thank you, Deb. Good afternoon, and thank you to the Calgary Chamber for bringing us together today. Today is a significant moment for both Alberta and Canada. We're here to welcome Prime Minister Carney to Calgary and to celebrate something powerful, the federal government and a province coming together to collaborate on economic growth, Canada's future, and our shared national prosperity. We're living through a pivotal inflection point in the global economy. The AI revolution is driving unprecedented energy demand. The US alone has 130 gigawatts of proposed data center development, nearly matching Canada's entire installed electricity capacity. This is the scale of economic activity happening right now, and Canada has a choice. Do we power this growth here, or do we watch it go elsewhere? What makes today historic is this. We have a federal government and provincial leadership aligned on the answer. Prime Minister Carney has made Canada's economic growth and prosperity a national priority. Premier Smith has consistently championed Alberta's role as a global energy leader. This is what nation building is. This is what happens when governments choose growth over gridlock. When regulations support rather than restrict reliable energy development, major companies and investors know they can build. Every new factory, data center, manufacturing facility, and housing development needs power. They need it to be reliable, affordable, and available now. This is Canada at its best. Governments working together to ensure Canadian communities, businesses, and workers benefit from the most significant wave of energy demand in our lifetimes. Pro-growth policies means companies like Capital Power and many others across the energy sector can invest, build, and create the capacity this country needs, creating new jobs and building long-term prosperity. But here's the thing. This isn't just a government issue. It's a national conversation that each of us needs to have at every kitchen table across the country. If we as Canadians want a prosperous future, if we want sovereign capacity to power our growth, we need to understand what's at stake and support our leaders willing to make those bold calls. Prime Minister Carney and Premier Smith are doing just that. They're prioritizing Canada's economic potential over regulatory inertia. They're moving at the speed this moment requires. And that leadership deserves recognition and support, not just from industry, but from all of us who want Canada to seize the opportunity. So, Prime Minister, welcome to Calgary. Thank you for your leadership and your commitment to unlocking Canada's growth, to ensuring Canada becomes an energy superpower. And thank you, officials and leaders from the Government of Alberta and Canada, for all your efforts in making this moment possible. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming the Right Honourable Mark Carney, 24th Prime Minister of Canada.
Great. Thank you very much. Wow. Thanks, Larry. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Thank you very much. That means the world to me, and that shows just what this room is. A room that's ready to get things done. A room that's been held back but now ready to get things done, and that's what today is about. I want to start by just acknowledging Ministers Olszewski and Hodgson, my fellow MP, Corey Hogan, Premier Kenny, former Premier Kenny, Jason, a tremendous public servant of this province, of this country, through challenging times. I'd like to welcome Mayor Farkas. He shows up and all of a sudden everything gets sorted out. He's got remarkable, he's on a roll. And thank you, Deborah, and all your team from the Chamber. It's great to be back home in Alberta. It's great to be back with the Chamber. It was about a year ago, in fact, I think it was exactly a year ago this week, that I was last at the Chamber. Some of you weren't there. There were 20 people around the table, and Deborah brought cupcakes, Edmonton Oiler color cupcakes, on a cold Thursday afternoon. Today we're having Alberta beef. Over 1,000 business and community leaders on an important day for my home province and for our country. Things are definitely looking up. Thank you. You know, Calgarians and Albertans have always been bold. Here, ingenuity is a resource every bit as powerful as what lies beneath our soil. It's a mindset that has led to the founding of great companies. I'm going to get in trouble because I can't list them all. WestJet, TC Energy, Canadian Natural, our sponsors today, to name but a few. Because after all, this is a city that grew from a fort on the Bow River into a global energy capital in little more than one lifetime. Proof that when Albertans commit, they don't just rise to the challenge of the day, they draw entirely new horizons of Canadian possibility. This country has never needed that spirit more than now. As Avik just referenced, and Deborah did as well, the world is changing rapidly. The U.S., as is their right, is transforming all of its trading relationships. But as a consequence of that, many of our strengths, based on historic close ties with America, have become our vulnerabilities. Last year, for example, 3/4 of Canada's overall exports went to the U.S. Over 90% of our lumber, our aluminum, our steel. Over 95% of our energy exports go to the States. That tight interdependence, once a strength, now a weakness. We estimate that the U.S. tariffs, and almost more importantly, the uncertainty that they're causing, will wipe about $50 billion from the Canadian economy. That's the equivalent of about $1,300 for every Canadian. And this change, reinforced by technological changes, happening fast. It's not a transition, it's a rupture, which means that our economic strategy needs to change just as dramatically and rapidly. Because we know that nostalgia is not a strategy. The U.S. has changed, that's their right. We must respond, that is our imperative. Thank you. And I'm going to talk about the MOU in a moment, but I want to put it in a bit broader context of the recent federal budget, because that's a strategy for Canada to meet the challenge of a changing world and emerge even stronger. And at the core of the plan is to unleash over $1 trillion of investment in Canada over the next 5 years. We do that, we'll increase our GDP by over 3.5% relative to the status quo. That's an additional $3,500 for every Canadian worker, more than twice than what the U.S. is taking from us. Le budget nous donne les outils pour bâtir un Canada fort. Il s'agit d'une stratégie pour un Canada qui a confiance et qui prend son avenir en main. We're taking our future in our hands. We're catalyzing generational investments by creating the right conditions to get big things built here in Alberta and right across Canada. In June, Parliament passed the One Canadian Economy Act. What it does is it removes all federal barriers to internal trade, and it fast-tracks. It gives us the authority to fast-track the approval of nation-building projects. To get that done, in August, we opened the Major Projects Office, headquartered right here in Calgary. The MPO, the Major Projects Office, is a single point of contact to get nation-building projects built faster. We have the good fortune to have Calgarian Don Farrell as the CEO. Yeah. Dawn needs no introduction in this room, but if those watching, she has more than 35 years of experience, including as CEO and chair of Trans Mountain and CEO of TransAlta. She knows the energy sector, and above all, she knows how to build big. Thus far, in the last few months, we've referred two tranches of major projects to that Major Project Office. Those projects represent about $115 billion of investments in LNG, in nuclear, in hydro, in critical minerals, as well as in new trade and energy corridors. And these projects are part of bigger strategies that go from unlocking our full potential as an energy superpower, to building high-speed rail and pioneering sovereign data and intelligence infrastructure. All strategies designed to build a better connected, a stronger, and a more sustainable Canadian economy. And that's why I'm here in Calgary today. And as you know, this morning, Premier Smith and I signed a new memorandum of understanding. And it's a framework for building a more competitive, more independent, more sustainable economies in Alberta and across Canada. Together, we will strengthen federal-provincial collaboration in the energy sector to unlock the full potential of Alberta's energy resources, to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, and in the process, create not just hundreds of thousands of jobs, but hundreds of thousands of well-paying careers. Here's how. The Canadian government will enable a clear and efficient approval process for a new private sector constructed and financed pipeline, priority to Asia, and a pipeline with Indigenous peoples' co-ownership and benefits. And by working with a new cooperation agreement, which is part of the MOU, we will maximize the benefits of one project, one review for the Alberta portions of any projects. The pipeline will transport at least 1 million barrels of low-emission Alberta bitumen a day, with a route that increases access to new Asian markets as a priority. This enhanced capacity would be on top of a further expansion of Trans Mountain by an additional 300,000 to 400,000 Alberta barrels per day. These projects can diversify our exports, reduce the discount on the current sales to U.S. markets, increase our independence, increase Canada's prosperity. To make them possible, our MOU also advances the construction of Pathways Plus, because we recognize that in order to be competitive over the longer term, energy doesn't only have to be low risk and low cost, but also low carbon. Pathways Plus will be the largest carbon capture, utilization and storage project in the world, achieving emissions reductions that are the equivalent of taking 90% of all the trucks and cars off the road in Alberta. It will make Alberta oil amongst the world's lowest carbon intensity in the world. And it has the potential to create an entirely new industry in Canada, just as Alberta did with the oil sands when I was a kid. The MOU is committed to building in partnership through cooperative federalism. Cooperation, obviously, between the federal and Alberta governments. Cooperation by ensuring that Indigenous economic benefits, partnerships, and opportunities for co-ownership are fundamental to every project. Cooperation by recognizing that British Columbians should share substantial economic and financial benefits from projects that impact them. Now, it's important to recognize that the agreement between Alberta and Canada is about much more than pipelines. It helps set the stage for the next phase of an industrial transformation underway in this province. Under this agreement, we will collaborate on multiple projects to meet growing consumer and industrial energy demand, including through new nuclear power and new interties with neighboring provinces that increase affordability and resilience of the system while lowering emissions. We'll also work to unlock sovereign AI data centers that create opportunities for Alberta's and Canada's burgeoning AI ecosystem. Avik just referenced the challenge worldwide. We'll do it in a way that protects our independence of our information and our algorithms. Nous allons réaliser de grandes choses et le faire de façon durable. Notre nouvelle stratégie de compétitivité climatique est notre plan pour stimuler la croissance tout en réduisant nos émissions. Et cette stratégie va aider à générer des centaines de milliards de dollars d'investissements dans les infrastructures nucléaires, hydroélectriques, éoliennes, de stockage de carbone et de réseaux électriques, afin de faire du Canada chef de file de l'économie à faible émission de carbone. So this is all consistent with our broader climate competitiveness strategy. Early in the new year, the federal government will release our new electricity strategy, which will provide the tools and chart the path to double clean generation across Canada. When we power our country with sources such as hydro, wind, solar, nuclear, we don't just cut emissions, we give ourselves a competitive edge in the economy of the future. And I'll just spend a moment on the MOU to highlight how it's consistent and aligned with our competitiveness strategy. First, the first pillar of that strategy is to strengthen industrial carbon pricing in Canada to provide long-term certainty for businesses and investors. Under the MOU, Alberta is committing to strengthen the tier system, increasing the minimum effective credit price to $130 per ton. Under the MOU, Canada and Alberta agree to work collaboratively to design and commit to globally competitive, longer-term carbon effective prices, giving the clarity to Alberta businesses and investors. Secondly, in the federal budget, we expanded the clean economy tax credits, particularly investment credits for CCUS, carbon capture and storage, for transmission, for nuclear, and for interties. Private companies, those in this room, you will benefit from the budget's new productivity superdeduction, which allows for immediate expensing, 100% write-offs for investments in a wide range of assets. And very importantly, when you're looking at projects, these measures are stackable. They're additive. They lower our marginal effective tax rate for new investment to 13%. And they widen Canada's investment tax advantage over the United States to 4.5%, and over the rest of the G7 and OECD to 12%. The third pillar of our climate competitiveness strategy is to strengthen methane regulations in the oil and gas sector. And that's what this MOU does. Alberta commits to 75% methane reduction targets relative to 2014 emissions levels. To provide regulatory clarity, the federal government will remove the emissions caps. Canada will also take steps to enable the export of bitumen to Asia, including adjusting the so-called tanker ban if necessary. And again, I want to stress that via the Major Projects Office, via our new cooperation agreement, I see Larry here with Alberta, the Canadian government will ensure efficient and timely regulatory approvals. Now, we've done a lot, but we have more to do. And the governments of Alberta and Canada acknowledge that all of the steps I've described are necessary but not sufficient conditions. For example, completing a pipeline will also require a private sector proponent. And if you know one in the room, please, you can come see us. You can come see us afterwards. It will require meaningful and substantial partnership with British Columbia. We are committed to that. It will require meaningful engagement and consultation between the federal government, Alberta, British Columbia, and Indigenous peoples and rights holders. It will create opportunity for significant Indigenous ownership and economic benefits. I'm going to say, because the mayor is here, I'm going to say that while we're building a nation, we're also focused on building our communities. New hospitals, public transit, recreation facilities, arts centers. We've created a new $50 billion Build Communities Strong Fund in the budget. And through Build Canada Homes, we'll work with municipalities to supercharge housing construction, including new factory technologies such as those pioneered by ATCO and others that cut building times by 50%, reduce costs by 20%, lower emissions by 20%. And this work is already getting underway in Alberta. In Edmonton, in Edmonton, you started clapping for Edmonton. That's good. That's good. Let the record show. This, you see, cooperation it's infectious. And now Calgary and Edmonton are cooperating. Okay, I don't want to get carried away, but I want to point out that we've started this process. Build Canada Homes has started one of its first developments. I mean, we just set up this agency. We're just in the process. They're building over 350 homes on the village at Griesbach. Pendant que nous construisons chez nous, nous diversifions aussi nos partenaires en matière d'exportation et d'investissement dans le monde entier. Nous établissons des relations commerciales plus solides avec de nouveaux partenaires fiables pour doubler nos exportations hors des États-Unis au cours de la prochaine décennie. Ça représente $300 milliards de nouvelles commandes. pour les ressources, les technologies de l'expertise canadienne. De nouveaux emplois pour les travailleurs d'ici en Alberta et de partout au Canada. We're focused on new partnerships abroad so that we can double our exports, over $300 billion more in the next decade. In the past 6 months, we've made deals with the EU, with Germany, with Sweden, with Indonesia. Last week, we agreed to launch ambitious free trade talks with India and the United Arab Emirates. The UAE also committed to invest $70 billion, $70 billion in Canada, a powerful vote of confidence in our economy and the largest foreign direct investment commitment in Canada's history. And you know many of the decision makers there well. I'm very confident this room can help put that money to work for the benefit of Canadian workers, Canadian economy, and yes, the United Arab Emirates. You know, as today's agreement attests, we know that it's not just about what we build, it's also about how we build. Building inclusively in full partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Nous bâtirons en solidarité avec les travailleurs, en créant de bons emplois syndiqués. Parce que les prochaines décennies seront une période exceptionnelle pour les métiers spécialisés. I had the pleasure, after signing the MOU, to go to the Ironworkers 172. The next decades are going to be an incredible time to be in the trades. Et nous bâtirons de manière durable en mettant l'accent sur l'énergie à faible émission, le transport, le logement et l'industrie manufacturière afin de renforcer notre compétitivité parce que la réduction des émissions n'est pas seulement un devoir moral, c'est aussi un impératif économique. We'll build sustainably, but above all, we will build by buying Canadian. We will be our own best customer. When we build new ports, new mines, millions of more homes, we'll build Canadian, Canadian workers, Canadian steel, Canadian lumber. Now, before concluding, let me be clear that to catalyze the types of generational investments we need to grow our economy, we also need to transform government to make it more efficient and more effective. And that's why the federal government is spending less so that Canadians, Albertans, can invest more. You know, we've just come through a decade during which federal spending grew more than 8% year over year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. So we are slashing direct program spending. We're slashing that growth to a little more than 0.5%. Actually, it's less than 0.5% annually over the next 5 years. We're taking tough decisions. We're reducing the size of the public service by 10%. We're cutting management consultants by 20%. And through these choices, responsible choices, we will save Canadian taxpayers $60 billion by restructuring our operations, consolidating internal services, right-sizing programs. We will balance the operating federal budget deficit in 3 years. And while we do that, we will double the proportion of investments relative to our spending, going from the historic average of 4% to 9% in just 5 years. Ça représente plus de 450 milliards de dollars d'investissement en capital sur 5 ans pour attirer les investissements privés dont le Canada a besoin. So the orders of magnitude of that, which include all of the tax credits, which of course depend on the extent to which this room and others like it invest in the country, is $450 billion over the next 5 years for investment in this country that helps catalyze much larger private investment. Now, the other aspect of what we're doing, before I conclude, is that while we invest in the future, while we right-size government, we will protect the essential social programs that give every Canadian a fair chance to get ahead. And that includes childcare, dental care, pharmacare, the National School Food Program, as well as health, education, and social transfers to the provinces and territories. I promised you there was going to be a conclusion to this speech. I'm now at that point. And then we got to have a conversation. Look, the world's changing, including the U.S., and there are two potential responses to U.S. tariffs. One is to hunker down, slash the deficit, turn inward, in the words of the tragically hip, wait for the trickle down. But that would mean getting rid of our key social programs, not investing in what we need now, and pursuing nostalgia as a strategy. The other option is to take risks, to invest boldly in our future as Albertans have done throughout their history. You know, I was born just north of the Alberta border in Fort Smith. When I was born, the oil sands were just a concept, a curiosity to most, but a few dreamers and builders. But even before I got my learner's permit, by the time I got to junior high in Edmonton, the oil sands had been transformed into one of Canada's largest industries through the brilliance of our scientists, the drive of our entrepreneurs, the support, yes, of our governments, and above all, the dedication of skilled workers. We're at a similar point. That's the scale of what we can achieve together now. You know, we used to explore in this country. We will chart new courses again. We used to build in this country. We will build big. We will build fast. We will build bold again. We used to take risks in this country. We will step up to the plate again. I'm grateful to Premier Smith, to Larry, to her team, for working hard to create these new opportunities for a stronger, more sustainable, more prosperous Alberta and Canada. And knowing Alberta as I do, I'm confident, I'm excited that the people in this room and those you represent will take up this challenge to build together with our neighbors, with First Nations, to the benefit of all. It's our country. It's your future. We are taking back control to build Alberta strong, to build Canada strong. Thank you, et merci beaucoup. Okay.
Nobody's going to believe a standing ovation twice.
Hopefully someone got that on camera.
I'm pretty sure they did. You unpacked a lot of interesting ideas in your speech, and I just want to remind everybody that I do have my phone. I'm not going to be rude. I am going to be checking. You can text questions to me, and it is working. So forgive me. I'm not being a distracted teenager. One of the things I wanted to ask you relates to the MOU, the importance of a private proponent for the pipeline. We also know that what we need is some element of de-risking. Are you saying that there is no room for the government to de-risk something for a period of time in order to attract the private capital that's needed for a project like that?
Well, we're de-risking the project in several ways. One is providing regulatory clarity. A huge element of the MOU relates to that. So clarity about the emissions cap, clarity about working for methodologies to make sure that we can make the export to Asian markets, including, if necessary, adjusting the tanker moratorium. We're also providing support and clarity, Alberta providing clarity in terms of the industrial carbon price through the tier system, us providing clarity, Alberta providing some also support in terms of some of the economics around pathways. On top of that, we've got clarity, and I think clarity, but probably not as deep a appreciation, understandably. Not everybody reads every word in the budget, and sometimes good news takes a while to travel. But clarity around just how attractive it is to invest in Canada now, so the tax elements that are there. But you know, in the essence, the Asian pipeline will be a private sector project, and providing the framework for private proponents to make those decisions, again in partnership with First Nations and with benefits for British Columbia. Benefits for British Columbia is something obviously we have to work out. Let me provide one other area where we're providing clarity, or at least policy that's relevant.
Sure.
Is we have billions of dollars set aside for Indigenous. It's called Indigenous Loan Guarantee. It's a bit of a misnomer because effectively it's financing Indigenous people's equity ownership in projects. And the headline number is much smaller than the scale of the investment that can be done because, of course, it's a repayable loan, and then you end up with the equity. You see, you're way ahead of. That's all your old Goldman Sachs training there. So there's a huge element of both financial incentives that pre-exist in and around, plus the regulatory clarity that are there to, and we're going to find out the extent to which there's private appetite for this.
So the follow-on question is, you talked about the oil sands growing to a significant size by the time you had your driver's license. We probably had the same instructor potentially in Edmonton. But one of the things, you talk to the pipeline companies, and it's like, well, they need contracts. We need to provide incentives for the producers to actually fill those pipes. And you're talking about 1.4 million barrels a day. And so that's been the piece that's been missing as well. So it's a chicken and egg thing. We need to get the production to increase to fill a pipe. So
well, it is, yes, it is chicken and egg, and there's various mechanics to unpack that. Some of it's providing elements of clarity. There's been different financing mechanisms. I'm not necessarily advocating this, but for example, with Alliance a few decades ago, the backstop that was effectively provided. But as well, I'd underscore that there is a fair bit of interest, as an understatement maybe, in Asia for Canadian energy. Certainly we see it in gas, but we also see it with the experience through Trans Mountain, and that provides a line of sight to potential additional offtakes. Look, I'd make a general point, just given the audience, which is that the world wants to diversify. The world wants to diversify. Everyone's taking the same lesson, and the world wants to do more business with Canada. So we have an opportunity to provide that. Because these are also entities that invest in other big
investors, infrastructure investors, private equity firms around the world. And if the UAE thinks, as they do across all of their entities and at the top of the country, that they should do more with Canada, it almost follows that they will want their those they invest in, those intermediaries, to do more with Canada. But let me come back to one other aspect why I think it's important. This is one of the largest renewable investors in the world, the UAE, through Masdar. This is a country that just rolled out base load solar, over 1 gigawatt of solar that is competitive, in fact, more than competitive with their grid price. So the level of expertise in and around storage, which will be relevant as we build interties, Larry knows this, and the interest in what we're doing here, not just in conventional oil and gas, as important as that is, but also in pathways, in nuclear, hydro, obviously, interties, all that. There's an interest and expertise that is complementary. So I think it's quite significant. There are other examples of that, and most countries will not, because they don't have to, put a specific number on what their commitment is, but I think it tells us a lot.
But we need those long cycle, that patient capital, and I think that's the piece that's really, really important for Canada. Just let's talk about LNG for a minute. You've made a commitment to double non-US exports and have spoken about 50 million tons of LNG exports by 2030 and 100 million tons by 2040. How fundamental is it to both Canada's domestic economy and the geopolitical and geoeconomic ambitions that we achieve these targets?
I think from our perspective, doubling is very important. And even with doubling, we'll still have substantial exposure to the United States. And the United States, of course, is the world's largest economy, most dynamic. So that's not a bad thing, but we do need to have greater diversification. We have the opportunity. Energy is part of that. Critical minerals are part of that. Both, and I would say, I'm going to grossly simplify, in terms of energy, conventional energy, LNG and oil, low carbon oil, those will put up big numbers on exports. They plus critical minerals will help unlock deeper trading relationships with big economies. Critical minerals are important. They're critical by definition, but they're not that big in terms of the size relative to the economy, but they are strategic and they unlock broader partnerships. And we want that for everything else that we produce, and the next phase of the evolution of Alberta and Canada.
The great thing about critical minerals investment is important. What about processing so that we're not so dependent on China?
Well, I mean, this is true in so many ways. We want to use our energy as much as possible to get as much value add here. So yes, processing. It's limited around the world. There's opportunities in Quebec and Ontario in processing that they're looking at right now, which I expect will happen. They are very much tax advantaged in order to do it. But it also goes to what Avik was talking about and is part of the MOU on sovereign data. So building out a data architecture, an intelligence architecture here, we don't want to just do that for the hyperscalers, the US hyperscalers. Right? We've got some of the best AI expertise in the world right here in Alberta. I believe it's in Edmonton, but there's some here as well. Yes,
absolutely.
In Amy as well.
Yep.
And we want our local. They can get starved on the vine, if you will, by not having access to that infrastructure. So we want to make sure we do it in a way that helps build it. So it's another example of processing. And that's where we get the outsized benefits for Canada.
So you talked about what you just mentioned about AI. A few weeks ago, we had Dave Mackay here in Calgary, and he talked about how we're really good at developing technology. The AI centers that we have, in Edmonton and in Montreal and in Ontario, but we're not really good at adopting what we develop. So how do we support those opportunities and make sure that we scale those companies so they don't, A, go south of the border, or their first proof of concept is actually south of the border?
Well, it's a huge issue. We're really good, by the way, at training is an odd way to put it, but you know, we look at our great research universities, and the vast majority of the graduating class goes to the U.S. So we lose a lot of that. So what do we do on it? First, and one of the things we have just done, I referenced this productivity super deduction. I didn't list all the investments to which it applies, but it very much includes R&D, includes all data infrastructure, it includes associated software and others. So it's very attractive for companies who are applying, so to speak, to do that. But I think we need to do a lot more, because in the end, what we need as a country is mass adoption, mass diffusion of AI. That's what's going to give us the productivity benefit. Yes, we want champions in the sector itself, but it's really just the familiarity of working with it. On a reference point, we're in the low 30s of people who use AI. I'm not going to ask for hands up how many agents you have and use, but you know, we're not as high as we'd like to be. We're more or less level with the US, but if you look at the top adopters, which actually the top is the UAE, they're at 65%, Singapore would be close. We have a lot to do for that, and some of that is, yes, it's the tax system, but a lot of it is going to be training in a way that's continuous.
And changing the mindset, perhaps, that we have to take those risks to adopt some things that perhaps haven't been adopted somewhere else.
Yeah, risk-taking. I mean, it is a time to take risk, without question. It's a room that, you know, you're here because you've taken risks in the past, so it's time to do it again.
Question from the audience. Achieving net zero requires industry-driven, rapid applied research solutions. Will the federal government provide increased funding to applied research? Currently, the funding is less than 3% of all research funding.
It's a great question. The short answer is yes. So if you heard the question around increase applied research funding, there are a series of pools of spending that the federal government in some cases has to do. So for example, under our NATO commitments, we will be increasing our defense spending towards the 5% target by 2035. Translate that into dollars, it's a little more than $80 billion between now and the end of the decade. Now, as much as possible, we will concentrate that on areas where there is dual use applications. AI is an example, critical minerals is another example, decarbonization, a number of those technologies are there. We're setting up a new research, a DARPA equivalent, something called Borealis, which will have additional funding. And the other thing we're doing, and university presidents or faculty, or if you know anyone, if you're on the board, $1.7 billion to attract the top 1,000 researchers, including their teams, to Canada, okay? Plus matching H-1B visas as well.
How are you prioritizing attracting those researchers? Is it across the board, or is it in certain disciplines?
Look, it's skewed to the hard sciences as opposed to what I took or
and what I took too,
you took. So,
marginal utility.
Yeah, we're exactly increasingly irrelevant. That's okay.
Oh, no, it's not true.
Sorry. Okay, it was all going fine, and now I just blown it. Can I look in the camera and say how much I value the humanities, the social sciences, and this is the future? Okay.
BA means be anything.
Exactly. BA. Yeah.
BA means be
but
anything. Yeah.
You know we have this opportunity as a country in life sciences, in AI, in engineering, effectively the components, the building blocks. Many of these are the building blocks of being the next phase of an energy superpower, and we should take it. And we do see this shift. These top people are looking for a home where they're welcome, not just with resources, but where they're, you know, the multicultural, diverse, pluralistic, we get along, rule of law, these sorts of fundamental things, safe city. Like, these are important. We offer all of that, plus some of the world's great research universities. And so we want to go out and get those. And of course, we're going to let the universities really drive who they bring in.
last point, but universities operate in an ecosystem, and you have businesses and other stakeholders and people on the board who will help set those priorities.
So you mentioned energy superpower in your answer just now. Many people have different definitions of seeing Canada as an energy superpower. What's yours?
Well, I start from what's a superpower. If you look at a superpower militarily, you have aircraft carriers, but not just aircraft carriers. You have planes, you have an army, you have drones now. You also have economic power underlying it and soft power. You have influence. You need all those components. So when you look at it from an energy perspective, we start with our strengths, oil and gas, conventional, but also the innovations that we've done. We have one of the cleanest grids in the world, 80% plus clean power across the country, hydro, nuclear at the core of that. We have the ability to double, possibly triple that over the course of the next 15 years. One of the things we're going to be working with the provinces is how to do that and how to do that together in the most efficient way. And then it goes to a host of clean tech elements that are there. Many, developed here, whether it's pathways on hydrogen or developments on hydrogen, whether it's developments in biogas, renewable natural gas, those aspects. I mean, there is a long list of elements for it. The organizing principle we have on it, or at least I have, is that it is going to be increasingly relevant. I can't tell you exactly when, but it's going to be increasingly relevant, not just the cost of energy, the delivered cost, the energy security element, in other words, is it low risk? Are we reliable? We are reliable people, but also the carbon component of the energy. That's why we like pathways. That's why pathways is important, because it helps lock in the lowest risk, one of the lowest marginal costs, and then the lowest carbon delivered oil. You'll see that the LNG projects that we're backing as national projects, they are top quartile or top decile in terms of the lowest emissions LNG. They benefit from the hydro system. All of the critical mineral projects and mining projects we backed are net zero or near net zero. And this stuff, like in some jurisdictions it matters now, in others it's going to matter in the future. And we've got all the we in Canada have all the components of that. So that's a long answer because there's many aspects of being a superpower, and it also goes back to this basic point that we need to diversify. You referenced it in your remarks at the start, just how much the province has diversified, how much the city has diversified. This is the next phase of that transformation.
So today's MOU really sets a platform for growth and an exciting dialogue for an opportunity for Canada's energy sector. There are a lot of people that have a lot of expectations, and what we need is it's a combination of short-term and long-term.
Yeah.
How are you going to manage those expectations and so that people realize that we are making progress, and the truth of the matter is that some of these things are going to take longer than we would like? Yeah,
it's a great question, and in many respects, it's a fundamentally political question. And I'm a politician now, so I kind of have to answer.
Yes, you do, actually.
I think the first is part of what we're doing, which is helping each other understand the scale of both the challenge and the opportunity, and that it requires big investment, big changes. It requires us to be bold, first. Second, it does require transparency about how long it takes to, even with perfect information, how long it takes to actually build out a pipeline, a nuclear power plant, whatever. And it does require doing something tangible in the interim, which is why I took the moment to, and the mayor and I talked about this before, it's why I took the moment to talk about what we're going to do on community infrastructure. We need community infrastructure. Hockey rinks matter, art centers matter, light rail transport matter. Investing in that, and us investing, our big thing is build Canada. You probably caught that, Canada Strong. We want people to see that we're building Canada sooner, in their neighborhood, in and around, Well, we're saying that we are building Grays Bay Port in Nunavut, which is going to open up opportunities. Well, we're building what we've decided, to work together today with Alberta, because most people won't see that. They will benefit from it, absolutely benefit from it, but they will see what's happening in their neighborhood, and they deserve to see us building together for that.
We also need funding for the Oval. I just would put that out there. The Olympic Oval.
For the Oval, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well we can brief you on that later. But when you talk to...
It was fine last time I was there.
No, it's...
What did you do to it? You're supposed to take care of it.
It's old.
Okay.
It needs chillers and other things.
Okay.
You talked about building, this is my last question, you talked about building Canada, and you've emphasized but alongside that, you made the comment in your speech that this is an excellent opportunity for getting into the trades, and just wanted to, what are your plans to encourage more youth to choose these career pathways and to bolster the trades production? Like we need people to help build Canada strong. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so I came from, I referenced it briefly, I just saw Sean Strickland, who is the head of the Canada Building Trades Union, and one of the things they do is to help map, like, how many people are we going to need, how many do we have, and how are we going to get them? Yeah. And there is an enormous need, and I think we're just at the early stages of appreciating how many of people we need to get into the trades, young people we need to get in the trades. And so we need to do multiple things. One, we need to talk about it. Virtually every time I speak, I say this point, which is true, is we are going to create hundreds of thousands of careers in the trade. It is going to be a great time to be in the trade, because we're going to build for 25, 30 years. So this is the point. And then, those who come after us, I'm sure will build more. But getting people to understand, young people to understand, this is great. I'm going to move into a career, first point. Secondly, we are going to, and you're going to see more of this, and we'll do it with the provinces as well, is to work with the unions, their apprenticeship programs, work with post-secondary education, whether it's Mount Royal, NAIT, SAIT examples for the apprenticeship and the trade building as well. And then also have some mid-career programs so that people can switch over into that. So a lot needs to be done to create the training capacity, but it starts with creating the demand and making it clear that we are not messing around. We are going to build big. Because we're going to build big and build often, there's great opportunities. Yeah.
Well, Prime Minister, I know you have other places to be, and so I would like to close with your answer to that question, and thank you for a really good conversation. I know that we could probably sit here for another hour, but it's been a while since we've been in a position to celebrate a big win for you to come here and sign the MOU to talk to the Calgary business community. And I think the conversation today really highlighted all the shared priorities between Industry Canada and Alberta, and I'm optimistic that we'll work together to do great things in this country and build Canada strong and Alberta strong. So thank you very much for your candor.
Thank you very much.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Lisa Baton, President and CEO of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, to provide a few remarks on behalf of our thanking sponsor. Please join me in welcoming Lisa to the stage.
Wow, this is a momentous day. So let me start by saying congratulations to Prime Minister Carney and to Premier Smith for their tremendous leadership in coming together and bringing together a landmark agreement and, importantly, resetting the relationship. And Deb has already listed a lot of folks. It does take a village, so I also want to congratulate both of your teams for the day-to-day hard work that went into making that all happen. CAP is proud to be a partner of the Calgary Chamber for the exact reason we are all here today. So Deb, you and your team play an exceptional role in connecting Calgary's business community to the rest of the country, and that is evident in you pulling together today the event that we can all hear, so we can all hear directly from Prime Minister Carney. Prime Minister, you articulated Canada's challenge very clearly. Within the economic chaos being caused by global powers, Canada has an opportunity to stand out as a trusted and reliable investment partner. Today's agreement between Alberta and Ottawa is the Team Canada approach needed to turn a crisis into an opportunity. It is an example of looking at Canada as a blank canvas to chart a path forward that leverages our strengths as a resource-rich and talent-heavy nation. CAP and our members are very pleased to see Alberta and Ottawa aligned on a commitment to work together to grow Canada's oil and natural gas industry. The MOU agreement is a positive signal to Canada's oil and natural gas producers that meaningful work is underway to make our country globally competitive. The elimination of the emissions cap, changes to the greenwashing legislation, and the commitment to expand our access to global markets can be the catalyst to unlock Canada's full economic potential, to invite new investment into major projects, and to enable our country to take our rightful place as the world's next energy superpower. So thank you to Deb and the Calgary Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. Thank you to the Prime Minister for taking the time to share your vision with us. And thank you to Prime Minister, to you and your colleagues in Ottawa for the meaningful engagement your government has undertaken since you have taken office with our industry, with political leaders in Alberta. It's been a little frosty for the last decade, so it's nice to see. And again, congratulations both to the Government of Alberta and to the Government of Canada for resetting the relationship to leverage one of Canada's greatest strengths for the benefit of all Canadians. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you again, Prime Minister Carney, and thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us and filling the room today, especially on short notice. I'd like to once again thank our sponsors for their generous support of today's event, our presenting sponsor, Capital Power, our thanking sponsor, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, our supporting sponsors, ATCO, Enbridge, Ernst & Young, Imperial Oil, Keyera, Pembina, TransAlta, TELUS, to our venue partner, Calgary TELUS Convention Centre, and our AV partner, Encore. A huge thank you to the TELUS Convention Centre and their staff for their hospitality in hosting us today. This event wouldn't have been possible without their support and being able to respond to our very tight time frame. I just want to remind everybody that the coat check has now been moved upstairs, so you can grab your coat right outside the doors. But most important, I also want to thank our chamber staff for putting together this incredible event, which came together in 4 days. So being, build Canada strong, we build fast, that's us too. The Chamber team did what we do best, bringing together our community, surfacing policy challenges that matter to Canada, and never stopping short of excellence. Thank you again, and we look forward to hosting you again soon. Thanks, everyone.